When a poor old man shared his livelihood with an ant, Allah revealed a treasure of gold for him. Suleiman was a poor old man who lived in a remote village, on its very edge, in a worn-out hut. It was as if time itself had forgotten him. His home was nothing more than a narrow, dark mud chamber. Its walls were cracked, and the roof, made of dried palm leaves, could neither protect him from the harsh cold of winter nor from the burning heat of summer. Suleiman was completely alone. Many years earlier, his wife had passed away, and his only son had left the village in search of livelihood. He never returned, nor did any news of him ever come back. Thus, Suleiman's life sank into silence and loneliness. Inside his hut, there was no sound except the whistling of the wind and the creaking of the old wooden door. Extreme poverty was squeezing his weak body, and on dark nights, hunger twisted his insides painfully. Yet despite all this, he was a man of dignity. His soul was self-respecting and despised humiliation and begging. He never stretched his hand before anyone, nor did he stand at the door of the rich. He accepted sleeping hungry, but never allowed his self-respect to be wounded. Before we move further into this astonishing story and learn how an ant, by Allah's command, would change his entire life, let me ask you something. From which part of the world are you listening to this story? And have you ever witnessed the reward of goodness with your own eyes? Suleiman survived with great difficulty. He collected dry pieces of bread thrown away by people, cleaned them, dried them in the sun, ground some of them, and sold some as animal feed for a few coins. At his age, this work was extremely hard. His hair had turned white, and time had carved deep lines of patience onto his face. Sadly, instead of compassion, his neighbors felt mockery for him. People looked at him with contempt, whispered among themselves, and when he passed by with a bent back carrying a sack of bread, they called him a forgotten beggar. Eventually, he even stopped leaving his hut without necessity, just to protect himself from sharp tongues. It was in a dark corner of this sorrowful hut that the story truly began. Suleiman noticed a group of black ants moving back and forth through a crack beneath the wall. He did not kill them, nor did he pour boiling water on them as people usually do. Instead, he felt mercy for them. In those fragile ants, he saw his own reflection, loneliness, hard labor, and the struggle for survival. It felt as if there was an unseen bond between his poverty and the ant's weakness, as though both were wandering in search of sustenance. He had a small amount of coarse sugar stored in an old, rusty container, saved for difficult days. But his soft heart could not accept keeping it for himself while letting the ants go empty-handed. He slowly knelt down on his tired knees, took a small handful of sugar, and gently placed it in the path of the ants, as if he were hosting honored guests. He watched them as they eagerly and joyfully carried the sugar grains away. A faint smile appeared on his lips, lighting up his weary face. He felt as if his life still had a purpose, as if someone still needed him even if it was only a tiny ant. Suleiman had no idea that this small act, done with pure intention and a sincere heart, would change the entire direction of his life. In this state of extreme hardship, Suleiman noticed something unusual happening near the ants' nest. During winter, ants usually hide, but this small army was unusually active. They were digging continuously, not to store food, but to go deeper into the ground. Suleiman observed that the ants were bringing out fine particles of a strange reddish soil from beneath the earth. In this state of extreme hardship, Suleiman noticed something unusual happening near the ants' nest. During winter, ants usually hide, but this small army was unusually active. They were digging continuously, not to store food, but to go deeper into the ground. Suleiman observed that the ants were bringing out fine particles of a strange reddish soil from beneath the earth. This soil was different from the ordinary soil around the hut. They piled it near the hole and then returned to digging. Whenever Suleiman cleared the soil and cleaned the area, the ants brought out even more soil the next day, as if they were racing against time, trying desperately to reach something deep below. At first, Suleiman thought they might be expanding their nest to protect themselves from rainwater. Once again, compassion rose in his heart. He looked at the last remaining grains of sugar in his hand and said softly, "Eat, my little friends. Perhaps Allah will provide for me as well as for you. You labor in darkness, and I wait for mercy to arrive with light." This continued for several days. The piles of soil around his old mat kept growing. Gradually, doubt and curiosity stirred within Suleiman. Why were these ants digging so deep? What was this reddish soil he had never seen in all his life? Were these tiny creatures trying to convey a message to him? Or had hunger and loneliness begun to affect his mind, as his cruel neighbor had claimed? He sat close to the hole, which had now widened, and brought a sturdy wooden stick he used for lighting fires. He carefully watched the ants' movement, as if they were silently inviting him to join them. Driven by an inexplicable inner urge, one he could not resist despite his weakness, he decided to help remove the piled soil. He did not know that this moment was the boundary between a life of humiliation and a life of honor, and that whatever lay beneath the earth would become a legend for generations to come. Suleiman soon realized that this immense provision was a greater test than poverty itself. He wiped his tears, quickly gathered the gold, placed it back into the clay jar, and hid it beneath a newly dug spot under the old stove. He covered it with ash and firewood. Outwardly, nothing changed in his life. He continued wearing patched clothes and went out as usual to collect dry bread, avoiding people's eyes. But the real change had begun silently. Suleiman decided that this wealth was not meant for his comfort alone, it was a trade with Allah. Secretly, he traveled to a nearby city and sold only 1 gold dinar. With that money, he bought flour, oil, and meat, but he brought nothing home in daylight. He made a deal with an honest merchant to distribute this food at night to the poor, widows, and needy of the village, without revealing the giver's identity. Soon, a stir spread through the village. People began talking about an unknown benefactor who was quietly filling homes with blessings. Some thought he was a wealthy man from a distant city, others believed he was a hidden saint. Salim and his wife wandered in confusion, trying to discover who this mysterious rich man was. Suleiman heard all of this while chewing his dry bread, smiling quietly to himself. Months passed. Suleiman began preparing for his greatest plan. Through a lawyer in the city, he bought land near the mosque and ordered the construction of a large rest house and kitchen to feed travelers and the poor. When the building was completed, the entire village gathered in astonishment. People stared from a distance, then approached in silence, unable to believe their own eyes. Suleiman stood before them, simple clothes, lowered gaze, but a strange dignity in his presence. He calmly announced, "This place is dedicated to Allah, and as long as I live, I will personally oversee it." The crowd fell silent. No one dared to speak. No one found the courage to question. The same forgotten beggar. The same old man who spoke to ants. How was this possible? Days passed, and no one ever returned empty-handed from that place. Food was distributed, orphans were cared for, travelers were sheltered, and the sick were supported. Quiet charity gradually sealed people's tongues and softened hardened hearts. The same Salim who once mocked Suleiman eventually came to him, trembling with shame. Suleiman neither reminded him of the past nor counted his wounds. He gave to Salim just as Allah had given to him, without conditions. Salim left with tear-filled eyes, and Suleiman thanked Allah for changing hearts just as he changes destinies. But the story was not yet over. A long-standing prayer was suspended in the heavens, waiting for its appointed time. It was a rainy night. Raindrops fell like the sobs of a sorrowful heart. The air was cold, and the atmosphere carried a strange sadness. Somewhere that same night, a father raised his hands, praying for his lost son. His voice dissolved into the rain, but his tearful prayer reached the throne. Meanwhile, Suleiman was supervising food distribution at the lodge. The hall was quiet, filled only with the soft clatter of utensils and the gentle sound of rain. Suddenly, the door opened. A man entered, wearing torn clothes, body bent, dragging his feet, face pale, eyes sunken from poverty and exhaustion. Water dripped from his clothes, as if he had wandered in the rain for a long time. He did not look at anyone. He quietly sat in a corner, staring at the food, waiting for a warm bowl. As was his habit, Suleiman stepped forward himself. He could never bear to send anyone away empty-handed, especially strangers whose silence screamed louder than words. He picked up a bowl of soup and approached gently. As he extended the bowl and the man lifted his head to thank him, their eyes met. Time seemed to freeze. The spoon slipped from Suleiman's hand. Despite years of separation, a father's heart never lies. It was his son, Khalid. My son. Khalid. Khalid collapsed at his father's feet, crying like a child, kissing those hands hardened by years of labor and giving. Forgive me, father. I was lost. I failed. I ran from debts and defeat and returned to you, only to find you a guardian of the poor and father to orphans. Suleiman lifted him, embraced him, and said through tears, Do not cry, my son. When people abandoned me, Allah enriched me. Do you know who became the means of my salvation after Allah? Suleiman pointed to the ground and said, A weak ant. I fed it, and the Lord of the worlds rewarded me. He then showed Khalid the hidden place and revealed the secret he had never shared. Standing there, he spoke words simple yet heavy with truth. Provision does not come from strength or cleverness. It comes from where one cannot even imagine. When intention is pure for Allah and hands are extended for goodness, Allah opens paths even through the smallest of His creations. Suleiman lived the rest of his life with dignity, peace, and gratitude. And the story of the ants became a legend passed from heart to heart, generation to generation, reminding people that kindness never goes to waste, and that when Allah is with someone, the forces of earth and heaven move in their favor. This is only imaginative story. When a poor old man shared his livelihood with an ant, Allah revealed a treasure of gold for him.